Good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon from where you are. Just to introduce myself, my name is Brenda Omune, and I'm here to share with you my homeschooling experience. And I just want to share, the way it is. I know we are used to getting filtered information about homeschooling, and so I'm here just to give you the raw experience, my experience. My experience may be different from every other person's experience. I'm not a template, so that you can, benchmark me with. No, I'm just here to share my honest experience. Start by, answering the most fundamental question. And I don't know if it's fundamental, but one of the most first questions that anyone asks a homeschooling mother: why did you choose to homeschool? And like any other parent, we were used to having a traditional way of education. And I don't think there is any single parent who knew from the word go that they want to do what? They want to homeschool. This is something that, you know, comes after much consideration, much prayer, much research. And during my time, there was no information about homeschooling. If anything, everyone thought that it was illegal. It's not like right now when there is, so many parents who are homeschooling, so many people are interested in homeschooling. There is so much information about homeschooling, so many families are homeschooling. It was not the same thing with us back then. And so, why did I choose to homeschool? I remember um, not coming to this decision, like I cannot put a finger and say that on December 15th, I decided to homeschool. No, that was not it. But I know circumstances that shaped my mind in homeschooling. And the first was when I was in primary school. There is something that happened. I was in a boarding school, yeah? It was a primary boarding school. And there is something that happened that made me, know that I don't want to subject my children to that. Of course, like our parents gave us the best. I don't think there is any single parent who, did not choose the best for their children. All of us, our parents, gave us the best that they could. So on this particular night, we are sleeping in the dormitory, you know, and just like any other primary boarding school, you're being locked in, and the matron sleeps with the key, and so I remember not being able to sleep. And then at around midnight or thereabout, I saw someone walking with a torch. And that person was moving from bed to bed. And so I could see the torch coming. And then when it came to my direction, the impression came that I need to close my eyes and pretend that I'm sleeping. And so this person came and, stood there, with a torch right in my eyes. But, I'm there closing my eyes and pretending that I am very much asleep. And the person stood there for, I don't know how long, though it seems forever, but maybe it wasn't. And then probably thought this one is asleep, and moved to the next bed. And the next. And that girl screamed. That girl screamed. And by the time the lights were being turned on, there was no one, like you could not see that this is the person who has been caught doing this. But that girl had a cat, Yeah, that girl had a cut. I don't know whether it was on the hand or on the neck. I don't remember. But it was something that stuck with me for really quite some time, because all of us, we were really terrified. And we you know you just have to bear with that, because now what other option do you have anyway? And besides, you are just in primary school. You're just a baby. You cannot even say some things to your parent. You cannot say, oh please, I don't want this good and all that. These are the privileges that some of these our kids are having right now, but it wasn't so. So for me, it was more than just education. I was looking at something that is more than academics, something that will help me nurture curiosity, you know, building character, strengthening family bonds, yeah, and helping the child to develop, a love for learning. I also remember, seeing children who were not in boarding school, having to carry big bags, like heavy bags, with books, and they have to wake up very early in the morning and, come back very much late. And by the way, before I went to boarding school, I was in a primary school in Nairobi, that is in Kenya. And I remember being woken up by the nanny at around 3, because the bus would come at around 4:30, and just getting us ready and all that. And I just remember, like sleeping the entire time, because I felt so much. I used to feel tired, most of the days, until my father now decided, I no, let me just send these girls to boarding school. It was me and my sisters, my elder sister, and then later my younger sister joined us, because it was really a good school. Another reason why I chose to homeschool was the flexibility. Having researched about homeschooling, I saw it was so flexible. It didn't have the pressure that normal schools do have. You know, like you can organize with the teacher or with the assessor or with the supervisor, depending on the curriculum that you have chosen. We are going to talk about curriculum. Yes, we're going to talk about curriculum, but depending with what you've chosen, you can shape what kind of, or you can structure with the teacher and with all these people the kind of method you want your child to be educated in. Okay, so the flexibility that came with it was really, really, really inviting to me, because I wanted something that my children will not really struggle, but at the same time, having the best, like having the best. Yeah, the best of the best, Yes. So definitely there are challenges. There are many times you doubt your decision, if you're really doing the right thing. And that is why I'm here to share my experience, just to share my story, so that you can find a footing. If you're considering it, you may know where to start from. If you're doing it, you may know probably areas that you need to improve on, or areas that you need to implement, so that the experience can be good for you. The experience can be good for you. So, more than other than the the two reasons that I have shared, you know like the most important for me was, in homeschooling, you're able to train up that child in the way you want. You're able to instill the morals that you want. If you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, or if you're a Buddhist, you can instill the morals that you want. And for my case, I am a Christian. We are a Christian family, so it's easy. It really is easy for us, yeah. And you become part and parcel of this child's education. Many a times parents tend to feel that that is the teacher's work. I'm not supposed to struggle with this baby, because after all I am paying school fees. But that is not it. because that child will pass that stage, and in life, learning is an ever continuous what ever continuous process. Like you learn every day, whether you're in and out of school. You just have to learn. So when I thought about this, I started now asking myself questions. I started reading articles. I started watching videos. I started following parents who are homeschooling, thinking about or looking into sorry about that, looking into how they even chose their curriculums, how they became, how they decided to choose whatever curriculum they have chosen. So, but one thing that I want to emphasize is this: every child is unique. Every child learns differently. Some quickly, some slowly, some get the concept faster than others. And you know what? In traditional schooling system, the teacher will always go with the fast learners, yeah? Not unless that teacher is really passionate about teaching and helping even the poor learners. But usually they go with those who are fast learners. I really have respect to teachers, okay, because that work is not easy. If anything, I always say the people who should be paid most in this country are teachers, because whoa, their work is just so great. I have 4 children, and I can tell you how overwhelming at times it gets. And I'm just imagining a teacher who has more than 50 students, like more than one class, and they have to perform. It's quite something, right? It is really quite something. So I'm going to share my struggles, my victories, areas that I needed to work on, areas that took me time, areas that, was just a walkover, so that you, as a person who is considering, or a person who is homeschooling, may find comfort if you're getting overwhelmed, may find reasons to homeschool if you've not settled for it, and don't do it blindly, because as I'll be sharing the challenges that I went through, you may want to make some smart moves, before you decide to do what? To homeschool. Before you decide to homeschool. Instead of rushing into it, I want us to move with understanding, because homeschooling, you have to move with the understanding. You really have to move with understanding. Instead of forcing, learning into a fixed schedule, you can, by wisdom, choose what is flexible and adapt when necessary. And we get to do so many things together as a homeschooling parent, and that also creates some unique kind of bond between you and your children, because you are actively present in their lives. Of course, good grades are important. Like, who doesn't want a child with good grades? Good grades are important. But the most important is good character. And that is the advantage that you will have as a homeschooling parent over a child who has gone the traditional way. You are able to shape the character. Now, I am not saying that homeschooling children must turn out perfect. No. If anything, if you don't do it correctly, they may turn out to be quite something. And you'll be a laughing stock. People will use you as a point of reference. Look, this one was homeschooled. It is because they were homeschooled. That is why they're behaving like this. They were not interacting, with other children. That is why all that. No. We all need to move with understanding, and you need to have wisdom in order to do this right. So till then,